is Thursday. RawMikeRichards.com. We are, as always, broadcasting live from the DKI studios in downtown Toronto, 234 King Street East, the Pacific Junction Hotel. Sure, hotel. Coming up this morning, in studio, one of our great friends, Will Strickland. Going to talk a little round ball, NBA, NCAA, and, of course, NFL as we get ready for the conference championships. Right there, Dave. Actually, we're going to hear a little Howard on a, you wonder why we have the rules that we do in the NFL in terms of protection of the quarterback?
This is a very good reason why. One of the many, actually, because you look at, and then from knee shots and what we're going to be looking at, it's head shots eventually where people would target a quarterback.
This is full-on targeting. You got to see how dirty this is.
This is pretty bad, actually.
Dave, it's an abomination right there. So we'll talk about that. Also, speaking of abomination, going back to 1972, the Summit Series, we've seen, Ken Dryden, we've shown some of those highlights, and the mask he had at the time. We've talked about masks next week. Is it next week or the following week? No, in February, Greg Harrison.
Yeah, February.
And I'm going to show him this mask. I've never really seen that footage of the Team Canada Summit Series in between going from North America to Moscow. They, as we know, play in Sweden. I've never seen footage from there. And the footage that I have, it's like it was shot yesterday. It's crazy good. And the mask worn by the Swedish goaltender is probably the craziest mask I've ever seen. I'm saying almost Silence of the Lambs-like, verging on just taking a jock strap and putting it across your face.
Maybe that's what he did.
Well, okay, so you're going to see that. That's coming up today as well.
Russell's thinking to himself, that's not a bad idea.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Not for me, though.
He said he doesn't use a jock strap. He goes,
really?
He goes, au naturel, as he told me. Yeah,
he's commando.
He likes to let his boys breathe.
Good luck to you.
He goes, Mike, me veg and two. Okay, all right. I don't want to. No. It's meat and two veg, by the way. He's okay. This got off to a very disturbing start. I don't know if I like this at all. Also coming up, I know, by the way, we got lots of response from our combative sports that we've been playing lately. The midget Muay Thai and the wrestling with the midget in the monkey suit.
Yep. Ironically, Mark Zucchino all over it.
I put up the Showdown show. He's not saying anything. Now he's staying away from it. Okay. The bad boxing, too, also got a lot of response yesterday with Edward Rackley. That was pretty cool. So we will move on. Last night, there wasn't a whole bunch, obviously, in the NHL, Dave. You had two games. You had Anaheim beating Pittsburgh and Boston. Look,
I watched some of that Boston game. The only thing you need to know, Mike, and sad day for hockey. Boston Bruins officially announced that Rene Rancourt will
retire.
Will retire at the end of season.
Well, you know what? Then we're getting him on then. Yeah. He'll come on.
So
he was great on our show.
Oh, sure, but I'm just saying that sucks.
Yeah, a lot of people lose their minds because of his showmanship.
Best anthem singer.
He does a great job.
I know there's, you know what? I like him. I also like, I think it's Jim Corlinson or whatever his name is in Chicago. Love him.
Oh, boy. He
is
really
commanding.
Yeah.
I love it. Still two of my favorites, but Rene Rancourt will always be my favorite.
Does that guy, the opera guy with the beard, and he skates around in Vancouver?
In Vancouver, yeah. I'm good. Pass.
That I don't need to see.
Pass, yeah.
Vancouver.
Anything Vancouver, pass.
Yeah, we need our guy to skate around. Whatever weed blowers.
The funniest thing was when he was skating around and he tripped.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was the best.
Yeah. I'd pay money for that.
Yeah. I wish he'd do that again.
Anaheim has beats Pittsburgh 5-3. How good is Boston, by the way?
Very good. Very good. And all you Leaf fans out there that think that there's going to be a cakewalk into the second round, watch out for the Boston Bruins, especially if they have home field, too, or home ice advantage, because it looks like that's where they're trending, because it's going to be a 2-3. It's going to be Boston, Toronto. Are you going to go to Boston first, or is Boston going to come here? You might want to win the second half of the season if you're going to do anything in the postseason. You need that extra game against the Bruins. The Bruins are better than you think. The Bruins are so good that they can knock off the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Toronto Maple Leafs could probably knock off Boston, but can't knock off Tampa. I'm just saying, you know, that puzzle's kind of weird that way, where it's like, wait a second, he could beat them and they could beat them, but they can't beat. No.
Yeah, it's called matchup,
I'm
Dave.
telling you the truth.
Yeah.
Boston could knock off Tampa. Toronto cannot knock off Tampa, but Toronto could really compete with Boston. So let's get to the second round if you're in the city, which we are, and we want this team to do well, which we do. I know a lot of people sit there and say, oh, you don't like the Leafs. No, I like the Leafs. I like the Leafs. They're not my favorite team, no, but I'm telling you some reality here.
It's
That's
assessment,
what
Dave. It's your professional assessment. You kind of been around for a while, so you see these things. And what you're also talking about, too, and some people sometimes don't look into that. They look at stats. They look at where they finished in a conference or division. It's all about matchups, which is why people, when they're looking at matchups, and the odds makers are going, okay, so this team, so New England would beat this team by this. They would handle this team. But maybe it's a team like Jacksonville, all of a sudden, that you go, okay, well, they'll kill them. They'll win by a couple of touchdowns. I wouldn't be so sure of that.
Yeah.
And again, it's matchup.
Yeah, and I actually think out of all the teams in the conference, Jacksonville plays into New England the toughest. I think it's going to be tough. And if you're getting 10 points out there, like there's some numbers, I know that number's probably set sailed by now. Open up at 9.5, went down to 9. I think it's still sitting around 9, but at one point it did jump to 10. If you were lucky to get 10, you're very lucky because it's going to be within 10 points. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, and they're getting some massive weather in the New England area. It's going to be a little bit of a snow fest. It's going to be cold. This isn't going to affect the team from Florida because they had no problem going to Pittsburgh where it was frigidly cold, and they handled Pittsburgh for 40-something points and dominated on the ground. Leonard Fournette's supposed to be okay. This is going to be tougher than they think. I still think the Patriots are going to win, but I'm tempted by that number, and I took that number early.
By the way, roast beef, we didn't do this before the show, but find me a picture of Willie O'Ree. The reason is honored Wednesday on the eve of the 60th anniversary of the Bruins. He was the one who broke the color barrier, as they call it.
Massive part of hockey history and world history.
Yeah. So Mayor Marty Walsh, the mayor of Boston, declared the 18th Willie O'Ree Day, and he made his debut in 1958. I had a chance, and I've met him a couple times. He's a really entertaining, really awesome guy. And, 1958, by the way, historically, not that long ago.
Nope.
It really isn't. It's not that long ago. He's 82 years old. It wasn't necessarily about his numbers, obviously. He had played over two parts of 2 NHL seasons, 21 years in pro hockey, but it was the NHL one that we're talking about. He's a Canadian. In talking with him, so he probably would have been in his 70s at this point, because he looks fantastic, and his energy is unbelievable. So I said to Willie, I said, what's the secret? Because he's an East Coast guy, by the way. So I said, what's the secret? He goes, eating seaweed every day. I go, you eat seaweed? This is your big... I said, if I were you, I wouldn't be telling you. Don't tell people that. You sound crazy. And he was laughing. He goes, what? I tell everyone. I go, stop telling people. You look nuts. Well, what's nuts now is in most health stores, in a lot of the supplements that you get, main ingredient?
Seaweed.
Seaweed.
Yep.
And I said, we're showing pictures of him right now, and that's a recent picture, I think, is it not? Or it's not last night, is it? But it's recent. He looks... Are you going to argue with that? Look at him.
Yeah, they had a big presentation before that Bruins Canadiens game last night. He was on the ice, and quite the accomplishment, and something a generation, and it's hockey's. Now it's not the same essence, but it's in the same realm. It's hockey's version of Jackie Robinson. That's well, it is.
I mean, that's what the equivalent would be. Absolutely.
I know. Jackie Robinson was first, and there. I guess when you look at perspectives, that overall first, yes, but I mean, I'm talking about the barrier in hockey and how it's non-existent today as far as lifting that barrier. And you have a lot of different countries, a lot of different cultures, even in the NHL, where teams are starting to draft players of different nationalities, and they are making significant contributions where in the past you never thought this would happen, and I think it's great.
National Basketball Association, it is the Raptors having a decent fourth quarter, but maybe tighter than they thought. 96-91 over the Pistons. Valanciunas had a double-double. So 17 points, 16 boards, so 17 and 16. And I got to be honest, every time or any time I see JV have a significant game, I love it. Because I still think that at times he is the one that's had to adjust the most, and maybe, just maybe, in terms of what he could be on other teams, maybe it's greater. I'm just I'm a JV fan, and I think that in the style of ball that they play, it's sometimes difficult for him to get into the flow of the game because of what they do, and I think that there is still growth. I mean, we'll talk to Will Strickland when Will comes in, but I still think that there is still room for I guess traction, if you want to put it that way. That JV, I think, can still climb to higher heights. Maybe it's fit. And we talked about that the other day with other sports, about fit. And there are times where I'm thinking, if you're JV, you're probably a little frustrated from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen other players come in where he's splitting time, sometimes coming off the bench. It has been that kind of career for the giant Lithuanian, but I was happy to see that.
Yeah, Raptors now 16-3 on home court. That's the second best record in the NBA behind the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs are here tomorrow night. Spurs at home, 19-2 on the season.
Of note, I guess, in the NBA, one of the biggest things, of course, they're talking about is the fact that the Houston Rockets are shocked and disappointed that Blake Griffin and Austin Rivers didn't get any disciplinary action.
Yep.
It was Trevor Ariza, Gerald Green. They're both suspended for 2 games each for entering the Clippers' locker room. But the Rockets are upset that Griffin and Rivers weren't disciplined because they felt they're the ones that escalated the situation. Here's how I look at it this way. And that may be true. I mean, they talked about Blake Griffin with physical contact with an opposing coach. But the moment you decide, Dave, and maybe it's horrible that the officiating missed that, but that is the world of human beings. You miss things. You don't see it. But we all, as athletes, are supposed to understand that maybe, just maybe, it was horrible. They were in the bad position. They didn't see it. They didn't talk to each other. There was bad communication. That's what human beings do. But what you don't do is then, to me as a professional athlete, decide that you're going to go in, parade into the other team's locker room. I mean, if that is your idea of retaliation, then I don't understand you as a professional. Like, I really don't. It's not high school. You're not in the middle of, somewhere else as a uptight 16, 17-year-old where maybe your emotions get the better of you. You're supposed to be a pro. So, the Rockets can cry all they want, but I think their decision to go into the dressing room, you deserve what you get. And for Ariza, who really should know better, I don't feel sorry for you. And 2 games, does that seem like enough?
Nope.
Look, I get the intentional, or they feel intentional contact with Mike D'Antoni, but that doesn't mean you go, okay, well, I'm taking this to the dressing room.
Yeah, the stupidity of that. They should have really lowered the boom, because in those kind of situations, you could sit there and go, okay, smart guy's going to do that. You're gone for 10. Do you know what I mean?
I don't have a problem because I don't think it was that.
No.
Is it a deterrent? 2 games?
2 games? No.
I don't think it is either.
No, I don't think it is. Just like a lot of times in hockey where you see something happen and people make the argument. It's so funny too, because sport and life, although they are one and the same, they are completely opposite and judgmental. Because the first thing you'll hear is, it's the first time he's done it. They have to be easy on him, and it's like, no, that's not how life works.
No, because we don't get that benefit from cops. No. Trust me, I know we don't get it from cops.
Because if Johnny kills Billy outside, Johnny's defense isn't going to be time. It's the first time I've killed anybody.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry. But
can
I say something about that?
Yeah, fire.
Usually when a guy's name is Billy, he deserves to die. I'm just saying. The Billies I know, bad. All of them.
See,
all Billy.
I've had no problems with Billies. Billies have been okay in my life.
Yeah, so Billy, so you got my buddy Billy Hughes is going, what do you mean? You know what I mean. You should do time. You're hiding shit, but trust me, I know you should be doing time. Here's a shout out for Bill Hughes.
Yeah, Bill Hughes, welcome.
Here's another Billy. Okay, you mentioned Billy.
Yeah.
How about Billy Smith?
I picked the wrong name, man.
Do you think Billy Smith was a decent guy?
Billy Smith was intimidating as hell.
He was a bad man.
When I watched him as a kid, it was like, no, don't go near his net.
Okay.
No.
And so what Dave just said, what does near your net mean? Well, people think, well, in the crease. No. So let's talk to maybe a Wayne Gretzky or any of the Oilers in this circumstance. What does near your net mean when Billy Smith wields the stick of death?
Here's the play on Gretzky, the whack of the stick by Billy Smith. Gretzky goes down, still feeds the pass in front. No penalty on the play. The league says it's investigating.
Investigating.
Pass broken up at the line.
Okay, this is a different game.
Gretzky races in, goes back to the net with it. Gretzky trying to center. Smith had the short side cut off. Gretzky comes to the near side. Smith with a swing at the puck.
You can hear
Gretzky
that.
has gone down as if he were shot. He gets up yelling. He's going.
Billy
Smith, who is waving the stick in a threatening gesture. They're staring daggers at one another.
Crowd doesn't like it.
Sounds. Anderson comes in like he'd have a piece of Billy Smith. Gretzky is nose to nose with the referee now.
Oh, I bet he is.
Swinging at Wally Harris. Well, the Oilers,
I think you have to remember back, Jakes, to the time when Billy Smith was accused and received the penalty.
Gretzky's losing
He
it.
did it to Anderson. Now, he didn't hit Anderson obviously that bad because Anderson played a fine hockey game tonight. He's going in after Smith.
Okay, just remember that combination of Anderson Smith.
And they shouldn't do it. It's not their best interest.
Just keep watching.
And that far behind the play, as you pointed out.
Billy Smith.
Let's take a look. Billy Smith, there's his swing.
Watch this.
Something I detest, but look at how low it was.
Clune.
The stick bounced off the ice. I'm not making excuses for him. He caught Gretzky in the knee. Behind the net. Smith swings his stick around. He's known for that. Look how low the stick is. Bounced off the ice, came up. Gretzky goes
Machete.
down. Now,
They call him.
Centers.
Okay.
Anderson went to the
Another play.
backhand.
Here we go.
Johnson chased him behind the net. Here's Anderson trying to center. Billy Smith took a swing at him with the stick. There's going to be an Islander penalty on the play.
And he
Top
goes
on his penalty.
down.
Here's Anderson as he
Does
goes
this look
behind the
familiar?
net. Look at
We
Billy
just saw
Smith
this.
Swing the stick back. Hit Anderson with it. Anderson, you see his knee collapse. He went down holding it.
And there you go, Dave. There's your Billy.
Billy.
They call him Machete.
Now I couldn't tell by the video. Was he wearing those blue pads with the orange in the middle? Because that was one of the original.
I don't know if he was at that point yet.
Yeah, because
I don't think he was.
Because he was.
No, he's wearing the brown pads.
Okay, because he was very close to being one of the first guys I distinctly remember having color in the goal pads. Because as you guys know, the brown goal pads were kind of universal throughout, and then all of a sudden he started. Because during one of those Stanley Cup runs. Because they did win 4 in a row. They were going for 5. He did have the blue with the orange kind of where the knees would be.
So you're saying he was one of the first?
One of the first. I don't know if he was the first, but that'd be a good question for Greg Harrison, actually. He might know just because of the goaltending masks era and,
Or Liam McGuire. I'll throw this out, put his name on it.
Actually, I should say
he's gonna know
Liam
everything.
McGuire is
Yeah.
probably the guy that could answer anything like
Liam,
that.
how was the Earth invented? I mean, you know what I mean? Well, Mike, it was Pat Burns. No, it wasn't Pat Burns, Liam. So there's one example of how times have changed. What happens in today's NHL? If that's, let's take someone that would, who would do that today? Would Mike Smith do that today? Robin Leonard's going to try anything. Robin Leonard's going to pull out a Glock and shoot a guy in the head. If he's going to start making some saves.
I'm trying to think who
would do it.
Who would do it?
Because I don't think Tuukka Rask isn't one of those guys. Mike Smith's got a little bit of an edge to him.
Yeah,
I don't know if he would do that or not.
But not to that extent.
Okay, so let's just say it is Mike Smith.
All right.
And he does that in this day and age. What's the penalty? What's the discipline?
Ooh-wee. Double digits.
Is it double?
It's probably
do you
close.
think?
It depends on if he's a first-time offender,
Okay,
Mike.
so let's say it's Anderson. Let's say it's Frederick Anderson.
Okay.
Which obviously would make...
Which would be first-time offender for everything.
I mean, the guy didn't even steal cookies.
No.
I mean, this is a pretty good guy.
No.
If they have cookies in Sweden. I don't know if they do or not.
Denmark.
Or Denmark. Is it 10 games? No, not 10 games.
No, because he's a first-time guy, doesn't have a track record. Something like that would probably get you 5. I bet you 4 to 5 games.
4 to 5 games.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, so that is hockey in terms of discipline. Joe Willie Namath, as they call them sometimes.
Joe Willie
was one of the first athletes, I think, that was a brand. Like if I'm looking at historically athletes, now most people are going to attribute it to Michael Jordan, I think, when it comes to international sales, marketing, the sports athlete as a brand. But I might argue in that day where there's no internet, people aren't talking back and forth or texting back and forth on their phones. Well, actually, there weren't even phones at that point in terms of mobile phones. So there's TV.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes on national television and he's wearing pantyhose.
Oh, that's a good look.
Right?
Yep.
But trust me, Joe Namath could do anything he wanted to. He shows up
I like
all
the
TV shows.
I like the fur coat.
Everything. It was Joe Namath. So historically, bad knees. I mean, there's
Yes.
So you would think in this day and age, boy, they'd have him doing almost nothing. What quarterback hands the ball off? The ball gets fumbled by the running back, and this guy goes out and tries to make a tackle. He's a football player. You know who's like that? I think who's got that in him? Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is that type of guy, but I'm sure that coaching staff has been drilled in him. Okay, if and they do have this conversation. If you throw a pick, get out of the way because you know who they're coming after.
Oh yeah,
that's historical. But nobody goes after and tries to make a tackle after the running back fumbles it. Well, Joe Namath did. What is interesting about this play? It's not so much him making the tackle where he gets hurt. Watch the defensive player. After Joe misses the tackle, what happens? This is why the rule changes are what they are, and I assume this is also property of the National Football League and their broadband properties.
August 7, 1971, Jets against the Lions. The quarterback, number 12, Joe Willie Namath. The handoff to Lee White. The search for running room not to be found. The fumble. The pickup by middle linebacker Mike Lucci. The attempted tackle by Namath. The Lucci score incidental. What of Namath? Perhaps another full season on the sidelines. Look at it again. The attempted tackle. The failure to achieve. And then watch Paul Newmark, the outside linebacker, on the Namath knee. And all over again, the shock of pain.
Right, that. On the Namath knee. He goes right. He wasn't falling down.
No, he wasn't.
And we know in football, a guy's got an injury. It's Joe Namath.
Yeah.
He goes right after the knees.
Unreal.
Right after.
And you wonder why the guy was always on the sidelines and how he didn't play as much as he probably should have.
In the day where Deacon Jones was trying to kill you.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. You got a superstar like that in the 70s, and then also a guy like Bobby Orr, who still had chronic knee problems, barely played after the 76 season. And you sit there and you go, that's all it was? And it was like, yeah, it was. He could not keep himself healthy enough. And arguably, Bobby Orr probably missed, four full seasons, five full seasons?
Yeah, at least.
When you think of it, when you think of the amount of games and how much more he could have played, and oh yeah, a big loss. And a guy like that, how many injuries he had throughout his career? One of the great quarterbacks, the greatest Jet quarterback of all time. It's really too bad.
You're watching rawmike.richards.com on the website or the dedicated YouTube channel. We also appreciate those that download the podcast on iTunes and Google Play, brought to you by DKI Canada.
And before we get to Will Strickland, who's probably going to be joining us within the next 5 minutes, this is a slow news day in Toronto, but I had to announce this because I'm pretty excited about it, and I hope he makes the roster. The Blue Jays earlier this morning came to terms on a minor league contract with one of the greatest names in MLB, Al Albuquerque. Al Albuquerque has signed with the Toronto Blue Jays, so he will compete for a bullpen spot. Used to actually be pretty reliable as a Detroit Tiger. I don't know if he has any gas left in the tank, but to have the name Albuquerque on the back of a Toronto Blue Jays jersey would be pretty awesome. So I'm pulling for him. I hope Al Albuquerque is part of that roster, but we'll have to see. And as you can tell, I can't get enough of saying Al Albuquerque because Al Albuquerque's name is pretty damn cool.
And he's from where?
Albuquerque. No, I don't know where he's from.
Because if he's from Albuquerque, he's the best guy I've ever met. Like seriously, if your name is
Okay,
that.
let me ask you this. Let's
Yeah.
see if you can read my mind. Where's the first time as a human being I've heard the name Albuquerque? Where was the reference?
Oh, it's Bugs Bunny.
Yes!
Oh, yeah. Hey,
Yeah. You
Yeah.
want to go to the garage and do some karate?
Yeah, of course I do. Yes. Yeah. Did we just become best friends?
Yep.
Yeah, that just happens. Will Strickland came in with his posse of people. He's, so before Will gets in here, by the way, I see that the, and we'll talk to Will about this as well. NHL announces that Kid Rock is the All-Star performance.
I got some ideas for Kid Rock, but we'll get to that in the next couple
Are people
minutes.
upset about this?
I think it's a joke, but whatever.
Why is Kid Rock a bad choice? Do you think?
There's a little political side of it too. To have I don't know, a white trash performer at a at a hockey event of this magnitude. You know what? A lot of organizations have made some really poor decisions lately with bringing in talent to sing at their All-Star game, and does it fit the demo? Does it fit that? But with Kid Rock, there's a little bit of a political side of it. I'll let Will handle that, and I'll chime in later. But even when we saw the All-Star game here, somebody in the NBA office thought Sting's a pretty good idea for the NBA.
Yeah, that was
type of
weird.
Demographic
That was weird.
I mean, I don't mind Sting. I prefer the wrestler more than the singer.
Oh,
but-
Sting!
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the look was fantastic.
I'm dressing up like that one day just because.
You should.
People go, is it Halloween? No.
No, it's August the 10th.
He just wants to be Sting. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So Will's gonna be coming in here in a couple of seconds. To get us there, I'm gonna play you that weird clip from 1972. I've never seen this footage. It's one of the Summit games. Not obviously a part of the 8 games they played against the Soviet Union, but this was against Sweden. I've never seen such clarity in a clip. I just had to play it, so I don't know if it's property of, what would that be, the IIHF?
Yeah, double IHF.
NHL, is that you? Are you taking credit for this now, too? You watch the players, you watch how clear it is, but get a load of the mask. This is the weird, honestly, it's Silence of the Lambs. I've never seen anything like this on the Swedish goaltender. Will Strickland after this. Look at that mask. Look at, that's not even a mask. That's it's like a leather jock strap. So that's why you got to watch the show. You can listen to this, obviously, but seriously, I've never seen anything. Even in the early days with Jacques Plante, you know how you saw the early moldings of the mask. And look how clear the picture is on this. Now again, I'm going to throw those to Liam McGuire because he's probably got an answer. Roast beef. What was the name of the? Oh, you don't even. Yeah, you don't have the microphone. And now what? Is the camera obsessed with that weird mask? I would be too. Maybe it is Hannibal Lecter.
What do you want to know?
The goalie's name. Who are we saying that was?
Well, his last name was Lawson. C. Lawson. Yeah.
Larson.
Hello, Lawson.
Larson.
That's
Yes.
just terrible. What the hell does that protect?
I am a sommelier, and I need my nose to be good.
You know what it could be? I bet you it could be Kurt Larson, because the Jets had a goaltender named Kurt Larson that played in the WHA. It could be. I don't know.
That's just weird.
It is a Swedish goaltender. So
that is the
hey, if
strangest
anybody
thing.
knows, tweet the show.
And now we bring in Swedish hockey expert Will Strickland. Will?
Hey, welcome.
My real name is Lars. Let's not get out of control.
You know what, Lars Strickland? I don't mind.
You know,
I think that
That's
works.
okay.
there are
4
times-
letters.
Yeah, and I have an affinity for IKEA. So
Hey, welcome.
that
aboard,
being said,
Oh,
you know,
do you eat there? Do you eat at IKEA?
hell no. When
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
younger, though,
I've eaten there.
Wait, but
What's
when I was
wrong
younger,
with it?
because
What's
it
one
was
of the
cheap.
99-cent
Right,
breakfast?
a 99-cent hot dogs, and you get like tater tots or
You're
whatever.
not sure what's in them.
But they actually named the tater tots after me and my child.
Tater tots.
Well, they actually named it after my son.
I didn't know that.
They call them the strict tater tots.
Okay. Okay.
It just worked out. But
So, okay.
the hockey thing,
Yeah.
you know, the whatever this face condom is this guy's wearing,
Yeah.
that's one thing. But I was so appalled to see the 47th president of the United States
Here we go.
being allowed to play in the NHL All-Star game. Kid Rock.
Kid Rock.
The 47th president of the United
Yeah,
States. You
okay.
didn't know that?
No, I did not.
Not The Rock.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Not Kanye West, but Kid Rock. You laugh, you smirk.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But Donald Trump is in the office, so you never know.
If that can happen.
This is step one.
Yeah,
in the,
if that can happen.
This is step one in the succession plan. They're going to get that together. Kid Rock's going to be the president.
No,
the 47th president.
Kid Rock at one point, when you look at Kid Rock's story, he at one point had full, at least from my understanding, full legit kind of street cred in Detroit.
I don't know where. What street?
Well,
probably in Taylor somewhere.
Because
Taylor, they call it Taylor Tucky for a reason.
Because I understood that he was okay in some of those like house parties and stuff like that.
I have no idea, but it sounds good. Probably as street credible as the great and immortal Robbie Van Winkle. You know him better
Yes, yeah.
as Vanilla Ice,
Yeah.
but you know.
Well, I got an idea for Kid Rock. So during the All-Star Game festivities, maybe they set up the stage in front of the goal during the hardest slap shot competition. Because I'm thinking that would be ideal, and I would watch 2 hours of that if they put 2 hours of it for me.
You know what? I'm with you.
Okay.
Let's make a call to Gary Bettman right now. You have him on speed dial, right?
I do.
Sure,
I do.
So we
yes.
call Gary.
Yeah.
And make that a real thing. I
Set
think
it up
that
in front
people
of
will
the net.
tune in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You might get higher ratings.
Yeah.
I
Gary's
can
gonna pick
see
up guys, it's 10:39. Okay. That's so annoying. Will Strickland, by the way,
welcome
back
aboard.
in.
Strong J.
Happy New
Yeah,
Year.
we,
Thank you, guys.
We,
Thank
It's
you.
still okay to
Oh,
say
it's
Happy
good.
New Year 15 days into the year or whatever it is.
There is,
We haven't
there
seen-
is, because we haven't seen each other. That's
No,
one
I know,
thing.
but it's kind of
Yeah.
weird,
But
though,
in
right?
general, when you speak
Yeah.
to people, like I've been sending out emails about my tournament and everything.
Sure.
And at a certain point, I noted that once I got to Dr. King Day on the 15th,
Yeah, that's where the cutoff
that
is.
I'll cut it off. The
Yes.
first 2 weeks of the new year, okay, after that, you're like furniture now. I'm not going to say Happy
Yeah.
New Year to you anymore.
Yeah. Bingo.
Okay, so let's talk. Look, there's a lot to talk about, but your I wouldn't say it's not your hometown of Houston, but Houston is a hometown.
Yeah.
For you to agree. Your son still is there, is he not?
No. He is in the military. So he's
all over
in
the place.
California right now preparing for a secret mission.
Ooh.
So
It's got to
we'll
do
leave it like
Does
that.
it got to do with Kid Rock?
No, but you know, and if I knew, I'm not at liberty to say.
Okay, all right. So the Rockets and the Clippers, and I'm looking at the let's call them shenanigans. Are they shenanigans?
Kerfuffles,
Kerfuffles.
you know, dust ups.
And I'm looking at the whole situation, and I got to tell you, you know, and this goes back to, you know, the whole family of coaches thing. My dad's a coach. I coached. And some of the stuff I see in the court, I can feel my blood pressure going up a little bit for both teams. For both teams. And I get it. And look, the NBA, and you know it better than anybody else. Like it's a man's game. You're not. I mean, this is not. You know, he touched me. I mean, it's just this. It's like rugby, but just not. The ball's rounder. It's really tough. But when I see guys ripping tights off guys, when I see the stuff, you know, and Blake throwing the ball to guys, you know, it starts to get immature, in my opinion. It starts to become non-professional. And then the whole thing, and I understand if Blake intentionally or unintentionally with Mike D'Antoni, but going to the dressing room afterwards, to me, then that is something to me that is, as a professional, it's not professional.
Well, there are levels to this thing. And there are those who like really try to harken back to an earlier time in the NBA where you saw these exciting 78 to 74 NBA Finals games where it was more wrestling than basketball. And the NBA has done a great job in making their entertainment product more entertaining by cleaning up a lot of that. And a lot of people have an issue with the whole AAUification of the NBA because it's a different time. Kids play together in different teams as they're younger. They come to the NBA together, so they know each other. There shouldn't be a crime in that, but okay, they see a crime in that. The level starting with Doc Rivers and his son, the third best player on an Italian Pro League team right now, Austin Rivers, because he's not an NBA player. But he was kept there because he's Doc Rivers' son. Let's be clear about that. And so the level of nepotism that goes on there irked Chris Paul. And whether people say it or not, probably irks a couple of people on that bench who don't get to play because of Austin Rivers. And so that's one staying point because they were all mad at him. You notice they had a lot of animus toward him.
Yes.
And he's on the bench. Now, guys chirp all the time off the bench.
Sure.
But for some odd reason, it wasn't like he was the only one chirping off the bench. But it was directed at him because of Doc and Chris Paul and their relationship and how Chris Paul wanted out, how he and Blake Griffin had a bad relationship even though it was Lob City and everything else, how the only time that Chris Paul has ever led anyone to anything was that locker room because he couldn't make them to the Western Conference Finals. But, you know, that whole thing started there. These guys are all traded for each other and when Houston did the trade for Chris Paul. So there's a lot of back and forth with that. When you say there's a lack of professionalism, I know it's immature, but it's just as immature as fighting on a hockey rink.
Sure.
Right? But I understand the chippiness, and these guys weren't fighting. Let's be clear on that.
Yeah, that wasn't exactly,
fighting.
Yeah.
It was, you know, you have to understand there's the hold me back protocol in the NBA where Timmy Tough Guy's stances happen all the time, and nobody really swings, you know, outside of Aaron Flalo the other night. And it was all happening on MLK Day. I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Are you missing what this whole day is about? So, again, I like the chippiness. I think it's going to make for great playoffs, and I think that the referees have done a good job. I don't think the league did a good job in sanctioning the two guys from the Houston Rockets because they fined and kicked out Gerald Green and Trevor Ariza for 2 games.
That's correct.
But some of the guys from the Rockets, I thought that James Harden should have gotten in some games. Any of the guys that went to that locker room post-game should have gotten a couple games, right? And the guys,
Is a couple games enough though?
Yeah,
but
I
you
mean,
go into
it
the
wasn't a
locker
fight.
room.
It wasn't a fight. I get that part. I get
that's-
that part about the locker room.
You throw down a heavy suspension.
Then Chris Paul should have gotten a heavy
And
suspension
guess
for that
what?
one.
You don't go to any locker rooms anymore. What the hell is that?
Yeah,
I mean,
but I think 2 games is good for the guys because there was no fighting.
Right.
But the guy who instigated the whole thing, and the Trojan horse, I'm sorry, Clint Capella, who went to the front door. He went to the locker room door and knocked on the door. They opened the door. They looked at him. They
meanwhile,
closed the
go to
door.
back door.
And then he went the back way because Chris Paul knew the entrances.
Okay, but that's just like, look, we're gonna.
Trojan horse.
Can you go and knock first?
That's like, you know, my
Russell's
friend
our
over
Trojan
there
horse.
likes you. Can you come over here and talk to my friend who likes you? Like, it was a bad scene, but you know, you do have a very valid point in that going into the locker room and creating something. I mean, the fact that someone said that the LAPD were called for this thing had Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley in tears and had me in tears as well because the example was, okay, so who called and what did they say?
Yeah.
Chris Paul is coming in our locker room. What?
And?
Okay, and the problem is what? This menace that is Christopher Emmanuel Paul. What is that?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Well, I just look at it's funny. You know, when we get to some of these issues, and this is probably the most, and we talked a little bit about this last time. This volatile time in current society, and you know, you look at the president of the United States and some of the things that he says. Like, you know, it was funny when he was The Apprentice. Like, if he said weird stuff in The Apprentice, why watch the show?
Somebody watch the show?
Yeah,
I missed that.
I watched the show. But this isn't supposed to be a show, and some of the stuff that's being said, I can't help but think that. What is the next step, you know, for American citizens looking at it? Like, this is going to end soon, right? I mean, this is...
One would hope, but, I mean, there's an investigation going on and that he's openly saying this as the president. It's not really all that presidential, obviously, but it's encouraged other people to feel that way. You see a lot more of this kind of stuff online now that, you know, closet racists are feeling a little more empowered by it. And I mean, he definitely sets the tone for what the country looks like.
Like, are you shocked by anything he says? So when he says an African country is a shithole, and you're sitting there, does it impact you at all, or do you sit there and go, well, of course he said that because I know that's how he feels.
Well, that's when you kind of know what's coming. Like,
sure.
And if you put a mic in front of this guy and you empower him in a way that, you know, allows him to spit this thing. This vitriol, and you know, it was alleged he said this. He said it.
Yeah.
And then the very next day, he has a big press conference with all these black people around him. Like, the optics were hilarious, and so I understand it. Like, that's the game that's being played right now in America. And there's this great movie. I think the BBC did it. It's a kind of a mockumentary called "The Confederate States of America," that imagines the United States had the rebels won
And the South Wind,
during the Civil War
Yeah.
and how the world would look. It's really funny, but there is some, as the great William Shakespeare, great name by the way, as he once said that most truths are said in jest. And so this mockumentary shows a lot of things about that. But
Is this a recent one? Is this?
I think it was done
last couple
like
of years,
in the 90s or early
really?
2000s.
Okay, I
so
haven't
you
seen
can look
it.
it up. It's the
Yeah, we will.
Confederate States of America. And I thought it was always like really interesting to see all this stuff starting to manifest itself now. So, it's when they say keep politics out of sport, you can't. That's always been a part of it, whether you believe that or not. Sorry, Screaming A. Smith, who went on Fox because of the new merger now, that 20th Century Fox brought up Disney. So there's a strange dynamic going on between Fox and ESPN or Disney Sports or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, whatever they're called now.
And Stephen A. Smith is going on other shows on the Fox News Network talking about, how politics should stay out of sports. And no one can talk about politics and sports except him somehow, but whatever. So we'll leave that all that alone. I'm just really I'm engaged with this season of the NBA. Even though people are like Golden State's gonna win out, I think that there's more drama in the summer than it was in the finals, and I think this drama at least during the regular season keeps people engaged during these dog days of the NBA before we get to the NBA All-Star break in February.
Well, and if you look at, and we'll stick with the East here, where obviously the Raptors, depending on how you want to grade that season, the slight philosophical change what they're doing maybe offensively, but everyone's going to talk about Cleveland first. They're going to talk about LeBron. Well, I don't know if you can really if LeBron went to any other team, doesn't he probably take them at least to, how far does he go? Does he go to a finals or at least win a conference or go to the conference finals? He probably does, because I still think he's probably, in terms of an athletic specimen at the highest level of a sport. I know people are still going to talk about Michael Jordan. I certainly get that argument, but I really haven't seen a whole bunch of anything like I've seen with LeBron James. I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan.
There's not a comparison, despite people's mild to moderately, anally irritated feelings about LeBron surpassing Michael Jordan somehow. I think that when you see a guy in his 15th season of doing this and has gone to the final 7 years in a row and been to the Olympics a couple times in that span, that's a lot of basketball in your body. And at 33, it doesn't sound like an old guy, but he's probably at 38 body-wise. But because of the way he takes care of his body, and the mental part of it is really a big deal and a really big part of it. You've never seen anything like this, and people try to deny it as much as they want to. The cognitive dissonance that goes on with this thing is amazing to me. Like, sometimes you have to appreciate greatness, and you've seen it in your lifetime. You've seen Michael Jordan, and some of the people who cape for Michael Jordan are kids who watch YouTube. They have YouTube nostalgia, as I call it, and they love sneakers.
Yep.
Because if Michael Jordan's sneakers sucked, you wouldn't be talking about him. Nobody talks about Magic sneakers, and I think that Magic Johnson, because I don't rate players who are still playing as the greatest, or like they could be eventually when he's done, but I'm not going to say that right now until his chapters are written. But Magic Johnson is the greatest player who ever lived to me, because he beat and lost to the greatest teams in the history of the NBA during his era. And I'm not talking about in 91 when he lost to the Bulls. I'm talking about in the 80s, where, there were teams that dominated. The Pistons, the Celtics, and the Lakers dominated that decade. And you saw who the top players were. And how many times did Michael Jordan even make the Eastern Conference Finals in the 80s? Once? That's how good the 80s were. And Magic, they say, well, they had a super team. Well, they were playing against super teams in the Pistons and the Celtics.
Well,
so,
and a lot of people will say, for instance, that in the Eastern Conference, if you're talking about what LeBron is doing and the domination of the Cavs, they'll say, well, but look at the competition. Basketball is not as good.
That's a lie. Basketball is better because athletically, there are more athletes, there are more players who can play the game at a very high level. And again, the level of competition wasn't watered down by expansion during this time when Michael Jordan was winning. That's a whole nother conversation. I could have a whole show on that. And it's not
I think one day
dismiss.
you're going to have a whole show on
Yeah,
that.
well, I'm not going to dismiss the accomplishments of Michael Jordan. He won when he could win. And I don't knock that. But these two things can be true in the same space. When Michael Jordan won all these titles, but it was the weakest period in NBA history because of expansion. This is a better era of basketball. When Michael Jordan played on a 30-win team and made the playoffs, you don't tell me that's a better like better time. It was 1986, and they made the playoffs with 30 wins. But I'm not here to bash Michael Jordan. I'm looking at what LeBron James has done. You said, like, here's a guy who you think is going to be, they're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals again. You don't know. I mean, there's a lot of, when people start to wring their hands in January about a team, as they do every January about the Cleveland Cavaliers, then somehow they make it to the LeBron Raymond James Invitational, the Eastern Conference Finals is what we call it now. Then that talk about January is gone. But in all of that, and to go back to what you were talking about with the Raptors, they have the best record they've ever had at this point. They're 30-13. This is the better team, and it's not just a slight offensive change.
You think it's more than that?
It is a drastic change of culture in the way they went about it. Now, I wrote an article at Press Basketball called was called My Daddy Tools. It was about Vince Carter coming back and retiring here in the whole nine, getting him on the cheap, and bringing in a guy like C.J. Miles. And this is before, this is like in May of last year. So it was before free agency. It was before everything else. And to see how I thought Jerry Stackhouse was going to get a chance to coach his team, like everything like that. Yep. The lineup looked a lot like what I wrote in my article. And they're going to change their philosophy to play the game in a different way. Now they're young guys who they've developed great with the 905. Mm-hmm. I think they have, outside of maybe Golden State, the best development program in the G League right now. And you see the fruits of that labor coming off in Fred VanVleet. You see it in Jakob Poeltl. You see it in Pascal Siakam. Mm-hmm. You see it in DeLon Wright. They're even bringing up guys, Lorenzo Brown. Like, they have young guys for that bench to make them one of the top benches in the NBA. And that second unit is going to be key in the playoffs, because if they can play the way they're playing right now.
Exactly, talking about that today. Absolutely.
They're going to be a problem. The Raptors are not a joke, and I think that, there's always this thing about, America doesn't pay attention. Why do you care? Win games, you'll get paid attention to, and you win games when they count. I'm not saying the regular season doesn't count, but when you get to the playoffs, you can't get swept, you can't get knocked out, and I think that, the year that they went to the Eastern Conference Finals with a little bit of fool's gold, not disrespect, just it kind of hyped expectations of this team that shouldn't have been there because they were still in the growth period. Mm-hmm. If it happens this year and they lose, you have a legitimate reason to believe that they either have to look at changing the program or changing who's at the top of the program or doing something different. But this is a year that I think the Raptors can make real noise in the playoffs and become a legitimate contender to anyone in the East.
Do they tinker with that lineup at all? I know you talk about a lot of these younger players. Do they package these younger players to bring in something before the trade deadline?
No, I think you trust your program. I mean, the funny part is Dwayne Casey has the best record of any coach who ever coached the Raptors. Yep. Every year they get better, and somehow someone wants to say, they should bring somebody else in. Yeah. Well, he's done a great job in creating a culture here with Masai Ujiri, because in Masai you must trust, obviously. But, I think that they are who they are. They tried that last year and it didn't work out when they brought in Anthony Leon Tucker. You better know him as PJ. Yep. And just bringing in guys that were supposed to be LeBron stoppers, and instead of concentrating on what you do well, you're worried about who you're going to play. As a unit, as a team, you have to concentrate on what you do well and just do your job and give yourself the best chance to win. If you're so concerned about the other team that you hadn't even played yet, that's why you're bringing in guys. Right. You hadn't even played them. And that happened in the NFL playoffs. You saw that last weekend in Pittsburgh. I'm just saying.
I think that's called foreshadowing. Yes. I think that's what it is.
Or segues.
Or
much like tricks, they're for kids.
It's a bigger word. I didn't go to Rice. I'm just a lowly guy. You're watching RobMikeRichards.com on the website or on the dedicated YouTube channel here in the DKI studio with our good friend Will Strickland. Just curious, you look at Kyrie Irving. A lot of people said, for Kyrie, careful what you wish for. When you want to be a number one and you're number one guy. That changes things. I can't help but think what he's done in Boston and some of the games he's played. Can you argue that wasn't a great decision for him personally?
No, I mean, it worked out. Yeah. It worked out so far. Again, they have to show it when it counts in the playoffs, but they look good. There's a new energy in Boston. I mean, they've had this as they've been growing their program, much like the Raptors. Now they got an A-list star in Kyrie Irving, and they're going to get Gordon Hayward back at some point. How they integrate him into that lineup, is going to be key. But again, that bench of young guys who came from the G League, Terry Rozier, some of the younger guys they imported in, Tice from Germany, like they have a really good young team. I think they're going to make some noise as well, but I'm not going to cast them off as the favorites because last year they won the East too, but that was like window dressing. Okay, we'll let them win the East, but they almost lost in the first round to the Chicago Bulls, and had Rajon Rondo not injured himself, they would have gotten swept by the Bulls, the 8th seed. So, and that team was Al Horford was on that team. Jaylen Brown was on that team, so they had some of those young guys. But Jason Tatum and having Al Horford there playing with Kyrie Irving and like some of these other guys and Gordon Hayward coming back, they're going to be a problem in the Eastern Conference playoffs. I'm
curious to see when Hayward does actually come back and what he looks like. His game shape and play, it's two different things.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to ask you, because whenever we bring you in, you always have something on the go. You're always busy with something. You're tinkering with something. You're inventing something. What's on the table for you in these next couple months here as we eventually get rid of winter slowly?
Just doing a lot of speaking engagements at universities and colleges.
You did that tour of the Big Ten schools, I think, last time we talked.
Yeah, and doing speaking engagements on hip hop and education, leadership, and just life building. A lot of fun stuff like that. Getting ready for Full Court 21 Canada 2018.
Yep. There you go.
Where we have a new partner now with us, the National Basketball Players Association.
Nice, very nice.
Partners.
That's very big.
We're trying to build some other partners. They're going to do some great things with us. We had Jimmy Butler on with us in Montreal for the Montreal stop, and we're trying to get like an NBA player at each one of the stops
per stop.
To talk about what it means to play basketball at that level. Like that's where you first start to learn about the game when you're playing against guys you don't know. And I think Isaiah Thomas brought this up on NBA TV the other day about how the compete level for some of these players is stuck in that's my buddy mode or that's my friend mode, so I won't go with him as hard. But when you go to the court and he says, I saw some of these guys who they're playing for money during the season to make sure they get their contracts. But I saw them play harder in summer league and pickup games than I do see them playing in the NBA games, and that's a problem, But I understand some of the root of that because the money's there now. When it wasn't there, and you had to compete for a job, and I actually talked about.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. That is a good point. That is a very good point.
There's a lot of money involved in this. I went to training camp in '93, and I'm like, I got to hustle because these guys are like, you're trying to take food off of my plate.
No, what camp are we talking about here?
This is San Antonio. I wrote a story about it.
Okay.
Again, because I'm doing press basketball and write my column, The Open Run, it was ode to the free agent, right? So it's just like, what do you do when you're trying to find a job and something you love doing, and how your love becomes your work, but it will never be your work because you love it so much, right? And just talking about that and my experiences in training camps and like how hard it was. And the guy that I was following, it sounds crazy enough, Dennis Keith Rodman.
Oh, yes.
His work ethic.
You know everyone's middle name, too. Do you notice that?
As you should.
It is remarkable.
He doesn't know yours.
No.
No,
Mustafa.
Wait,
Mustafa.
No, I thought it was Hassan, but I stopped. All right, what is the first letter of your middle name?
J.
Mine's J too.
And it's the same?
Yeah, no.
And yours is J as well?
Really?
Roast beef.
That's Tommy Roast Beef over there. Hey! Roast beef. Give it back. Didn't I tell you to take it back? De Niro and Goodfellas. But I love that car. My wife, she loves that car. Anyway, Jason James.
You're very close on mine.
Not close on mine.
Yeah, you're very close on mine because that was in my.
My J is very biblical.
Jacob.
Close. What's the other big J?
Wow.
Jalen.
Yes.
And whose Bible?
You got it.
And whose Bible? It could happen. Jeremiah?
No, you're in the realm. You're in the realm. Mary and
Joseph.
You got it.
Wow.
Okay.
See, I didn't even know that.
I ran my biblical studies right here. That was one thing. I used to read the Bible on the stoop of my house when my parents left me at home to watch my brothers and sisters.
Okay, now you're just
afraid.
Now you're just showing.
I was
off.
afraid. No,
now
no,
you're just showing.
I used to
off.
read it because I was afraid. I thought the Bible would save me.
Not
I'm
a
like,
bad thing.
nah, it ain't gonna save me.
Okay, we're gonna run short on time. This happens every time he comes in here. We just run out of time, and I hate it.
What is your middle name?
John?
John. Okay.
John.
So I'm gonna remember
Yeah,
just
there,
John.
oh, I know you will. I know you will.
He doesn't forget.
Yeah, because my wife goes, someone looking for Michael John. Oh, yeah. It's
I know
either the
him.
cops or Will.
It's
I'm
gonna
praying
cost
it's Will.
you. It's gonna cost. It's gonna cost you.
A couple of things. We got football coming up, but Le'Veon Bell. If you're another team, if you're looking at what he probably is going to ask for, do you pay the money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's the top 3 running back in the NFL.
Oh, I was going to say.
I mean,
top.
because of his skills.
I love
you
the
can
guy.
say top 5.
Yeah, I'm paying him.
But I don't
paying
know
him.
why we're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They played themselves.
Yeah, they're done.
I am a fan, an unabashed fan of the New England Patriots, mostly because of my guy, the field surgeon, Dr. Thomas Edward Patrick Brady. Just so you know. And they won't overlook a team and go on Twitter and talk about what they're going to do to the team after the team you have to beat to get there. So, there's a lot of that going on with young guys in Jacksonville right now. And Le'Veon Bell in that situation in Pittsburgh has been a problem all season long. The locker room from Ben on down. Like, we can talk about, Todd Haley should be fired. The defense gave up 45 points.
Yeah.
Keith Butler. Can we talk about that? So, again, you talk about Ben Roethlisberger had the greatest, what I like to call, empty calorie video game stats in like a divisional in years.
Yep.
He threw for almost 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, and he lost.
Yeah. Chasing the whole time.
Yeah, well, that's the joke online is that it was a good thing that game was played at Heinz Field because all they did was catch up.
Yeah.
Right.
No, well done.
Bump. I won't be here all week. Do not try the veal. So,
because when you look at Bell, 25 years old. When I was reading about that, it's like the guy's only 25 years old. I mean,
Yeah, it is remarkable.
There should be another 4 years of maximum production in your running back at age 25.
you would hope.
Because by 29, 30, you start to lose that step. Maybe the cut isn't as, but he's not that power back that goes through the wall.
Patience, yeah, and
He's
also he can catch out of the backfield. Which gives
And
him
he-
another
he
dynamic.
sure did last
you
week.
can't always find in a running back, a quality running back.
He's
in
the
NFL.
closest thing, and I'm not going to say he is because he
I
was
think
my
I know.
favorite.
I think I know what name you're going to say.
He was the okay. Well, let me finish the sentence. Yeah.
Did he play for Detroit?
He's the closest thing to Barry Sanders in the league right now.
Wow.
Barry Sanders is my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, in this league that we're watching today, that's the closest thing to Barry Sanders.
Well, I like Todd Gurley. I like Kareem Hunt looked good.
Kareem Hunt,
in Kansas City. I
Gurley's-
wouldn't compare those guys. You know what I'm saying?
No.
There's some good
I like
running
Todd
backs
Gurley.
in
I
this
do like
league.
Todd Gurley.
Leonard Fournette
Yeah.
is no joke. That's a grown man.
Well, that's a horse. That's
Yeah.
a horse.
Well, SEC football. That's
It's
what
basically
you
the
get.
NFL, right?
That's
Which
what
is a
you
pro
get.
league,
Yeah. So, you're going to get some really good players out there. But I like Le'Veon Bell. I just and I think they should pay him his money and stop franchising him and giving him 1-year deals because I think that's a lack of respect.
I think it is too.
To a player that brings but at the same time, on the flip side of that, as a management person, you guys have to look at this too. His issues off field,
right.
with his recreational use of things that we might not deem kosher for a football player.
Yeah.
Although I think that if
Okay,
they're gonna,
Denver.
if you have to deal, but I'm saying if you have to deal with like Percocets and all this other stuff as opposed to weed,
Yeah.
if it generates the same kind of feeling and eases those pains, you weigh it a little bit, I guess.
Sure, yeah, no.
Okay, so
Good argument.
you talked about New England. By the way, people said, "Well, did you hear about Tom Brady? He's not available. The medical staff." Okay, New England. I'm not listening to that. Are you serious? Do you think Tom Brady's going to play? Gee, I wonder if Tom Brady. I can't hear New England
He's been on
any
the
more of your
injury list for
stories.
the
I
last 20
can't.
years.
I can't hear that story.
Is that the
Every single week, Tom Brady, questionable, shoulder.
is that the
That's all you hear.
what's his name? The guy from The Godfather. Is that the Hyman Roth story? He's been dying of the same heart attack for 20 years. So
Somehow he's there.
he'll be there, and I think a lot of that is to kind of take the distraction of they know that Jacksonville's is talking a lot, and People are looking at that stuff, and he's not going to be in the injury report because I think you have to close it off on the Thursday before the game or Friday.
Thursday or Friday, yeah.
Yeah.
And
then
so,
you report the
so
inactives
do
on
we
Sunday.
do we have numbers, by the way, while Will's here? Well, we can pin him
We could pin
on
him
something.
numbers.
Because I thought it was it
fire one
9.5?
It wasn't. It
I
opened
thought it
at
was
9.
8.5.
So it's dropped.
It did go down.
So it's dropped.
Yeah.
It did go down. Let me just quickly look here on sportsinteraction.com, of course, for all your gambling needs. Sports Interaction currently has the New England Patriots 8.5-point favorites.
So I did my numbers too, just so you know.
Minnesota 3-point favorites. Both of those numbers have dropped because it did open up as Patriots 9.5.
And I get that because of the experience factor, but you cannot dismiss what Jacksonville has done all season.
Yeah, fantastic.
And what they did going into Heinz Field and like punching Pittsburgh in the mouth the way they did. I mean,
Do you know
the
Case
45
Keenum's? Do you know
points?
Case Keenum's middle name?
No, I do not. But I think Case is his middle name.
Well, is that right?
I think so.
He's doing the Dieter Brock, the Ralph Dieter Brock thing.
It could happen.
Do you like? I like what's happened for him. I think it's a good story. I saw him when he played for the Cougars, and I always say it's the same thing. We talked about this a little bit. For quarterbacks, which I think is the toughest position to play in sports, I just think it is the most difficult position to play in all of sport. And sometimes it is the timing of who you played for, where you're drafted, that coaching staff, their philosophy, what your strengths are. So you get pushed around a little bit. You know, you go to a team that wants to do this. They want to run, you throw. You want to throw, they run. It's all that kind of thing. And to stay mentally tough and focused. So when you finally get your chance, and this is where faith comes in a little bit. I know people want to hear that. Sometimes it does. He gets his chance, and look what he's done.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about, well, he's a third-string quarterback. No, he's not. Clearly, he is not. So I don't want to hear that.
13 or 14-3 team. No, not at all.
No, and I think it's a good story, and I do think they win in Philadelphia.
There's a great story behind he and Nick Foles playing for the Rams, behind Sam Bradford, who got injured in Minnesota.
Yep.
He gives Case Keenum an opportunity to play, and how Nick Foles, who had a great year in Philadelphia, goes to find his money, does a terrible job, comes back somehow, backing up Carson Wentz, who gets injured. And now these two guys are playing an NFC championship game. Amazing story. And I think that
Do you think
Case,
Jeff Fisher's watching that game?
Yeah, he's saying he has something to do with it, of course. And Case Keenum's story is great because that team lost a stud running back and Dalvin Cook early in the season.
Big time.
They had an opportunity. They got rid of your guy, Adrian Peterson. They were like, what are we going to do? Sam Bradford's one of the most, accurate quarterbacks in the league, even though he's not the most mobile quarterback. He gets injured. There's no way this team, as long as people have been talking about the Rams made great strides. This team, the Minnesota Vikings, have done a great job. That defense is ridiculously fast and ridiculously good. You know, Case Keenum is finding his confidence. That running game is solid enough by committee. You know, when you're good in all three phases, you make it tough for a team like and let's not dismiss what Philadelphia can do defensively.
Very good.
It's what's going to
defensive team.
happen offensively for them against that defense is going to be the key in that game. And, I like Minnesota in that game, even though Philadelphia is the one seed and home team. But I just think that Minnesota is going to have a little bit more at the end of the game. And obviously I'm picking the Patriots. But I'm not dismissing or disrespecting what Jacksonville could do. I think that they're going to make Blake Bortles do Blake Bortles, and he's going to look like Blake Bortles previous
He's going to look
times.
like Blake Bortles. That's all you have to say.
No,
He
because
will look like Blake Bortles.
Blake Bortles looked good for the most part.
Yep.
Last weekend he did just enough to win the game.
Last week he looked
and
great.
Sometimes that's all you have to do, Trent Dilfer. That's all you have to do is win the game.
Okay, so I keep saying we're running out of time, but this is
sorry.
what happens with Will. No. If we go to Las Vegas, because I want to see a Golden Knights game, because I think they're an unbelievable story
I
too.
want to get that jersey.
That's yeah.
You want to? Okay.
Just to have
So if we do a remote from Las Vegas, you would go.
Yeah.
Is Vegas a Will town? Is Vegas?
Town is a Will town.
Oh, is it?
They're gonna fly the flag. We're gonna make it happen.
Yep.
You know, so let's cut the check. Let's make it happen.
Thanks so much for coming in.
guys.
Yeah, it's never long enough.
Always.
We are going to do it again. Here.
What? We just become best friends.
Yes, we did. And karate, we do karate.
You want to go do karate in the garage?
Yeah, we do.
It's time.
Well, as you saw, we covered a lot, and you knew that was going to happen, and I knew we would run out of time again. Will Strickland in studio.
We're gonna
Big
start
Will.
booking him at like 10:15. Not 10.
I mean, just when the show starts.
Yeah,
I talk
yeah.
too much.
How about that? Yeah. He's going.
On a
What,
talk show. My bad.
and he's a business major. So he's going. So what do I get for this? Is there something in this for me? There certainly should be. Always a great time. What a treat it is for us to have him in studio today.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Tomorrow it is Pickapalooza.
It is.
It is Pickapalooza. So we just heard it is minus 8.5 Patriots.
Yep.
It is so plus 3 Philadelphia. So we'll take a
Plus
look at
3
that
Philadelphia.
and a look at some. We
Home
never.
side, yeah.
I was going to say NCAA basketball. No. Okay, we'll talk about that later. Have yourself a great day. See you tomorrow.